Hey, thanks for following along with my videos. I really appreciate all the support that you're giving me. That's really helpful. So today I want to talk about I have a class. It's a History 3000 level class. The purpose of this class is to learn how to write like a historian, how to do research, how to evaluate sources, those kinds of things. It's going to be a fun class to get into. The book that we're reading for this is one of them actually, The Landscape of History. I think there was another one I was supposed to read as well. Um, but this is the one I've really been reading. This book, it's really fascinating. It's a little heavy of a book. It's a gentleman who's comparing basically how to research in the sciences in and how can that educate us and how historians do things. How do historians do things similar to the other sciences, and how do historians do things that are different from the other sciences? And these are some concepts and ideas that I've heard even from my professors in the past. One of the challenges with history is you're dealing with people. One of the nice things is you're dealing with people that are dead. They can't talk back. So doing history on people who have not died yet is harder because they can change their mind, they can change their opinion, and now your research has to change. Whereas the people that are dead, they're dead. They can't talk back to you when you do your research. You just do your best to understand where they're coming from, what happened, what was going on, and pull it together as what might be the cause of why they did what they did. The other thing that's interesting about history is you are dependent on the details. You're dependent on your sources. So let's say you want to go back into history and study something in ancient history. You have to look for sources. How do we find out sources for that? This is one of the challenges of history, like, for instance, Egypt history. The problem with Egyptian history is the majority of what we have were written by the pharaohs, and the pharaohs did not like writing the bad things that happened to them and their people. So we don't have a lot of bad things. We just have a whole series of cool stories of great stuff that happened in Egypt. But we don't have a lot of the bad because that's not what was preserved. We don't even have the writings of the average Egyptian either, unfortunately. So there's a lot of people in history that have a say, were there when things happened, but we don't have what they wrote. There are sometimes people who find themselves a part of history. Like in our day and age, we see them as famous because they kept a journal. They diaried and journaled and documented what was happening in their life. So there's a gentleman that was mentioned in this book. In fact, I can't remember his name right now. There was a gentleman that he was a Jew in Europe during the time of the Nazis in the 40s, and he kept a really accurate journal of what his life was like and what happened. He was probably in life not much of a person. Not very many people probably knew who he was, but because of his journal that survived, he is a popular person now. We know him. The Diary of Anne Frank is another one. Anne Frank is a 12-year-old girl. There's no other, we don't really talk about 12-year-old girls in history. But because we have her diary, and as a Jew in hiding, she gives us a glimpse of what it was like at that time. And so these are ways that we can reconstruct what's happening out there. So in this class, we're going to dive into more details and topics and ideas along those lines as well, which is going to be fun. It's going to be a fun thing to get into that and learn more about how do historians do what they do. Now, if you've been following me for a while, I've already written that one paper for my class last fall semester. So I'm going to learn how to make it better, and we'll keep working on that as well. If you have noticed my hat, this is actually a hat I got for Christmas. Shout out to Clarkston's Farm, the Diddley Squat Farm, if you're familiar with that show on Amazon. Quite the guy. I thought it'd be fun to support him and have a hat. So I got a hat. If you know anybody connected to Jeremy Clarkson, shout him out, let him know. So fun show, really entertaining show to watch, that is for sure. So anyways, these are the things we're getting into in these classes. So just as a reminder, okay, next week is week 1 of the spring semester. So we're getting into the classes next week. So I have a senior seminar class I talked about last week where we're learning how to read the text of something and evaluate it. We're doing the book of Genesis, in fact. We're going to talk about Genesis. We're going to get into that book and discuss it more and get into more details of linguistics of the book of Genesis and those kinds of things. So it'll be a fun topic to cover, a lot of cool things to learn in there. And then this class, this History 3000 level class, is about how to think like a historian, how to evaluate things, how to do stuff. So that's going to be fun to talk about those concepts and ideas as well. And then my interfaith class is another one. I've talked about those books earlier from about, it's kind of a conflict resolution class. So it's going to be a fun one to go through. I've looked at the syllabus. There's some meditation we get to learn in that class. So that'll be a little more relaxing class to take other than these two upper division ones. But it should be fun. Should be a fun class. So I'm looking forward to exploring that more. Interfaith work is so interesting. It's, the one thing I would say about interfaith work right now is I'm not sure I'm getting the full perspective of interfaith work, because a lot of what I found, if you followed me in this last semester when I went through the 1090 interfaith introduction class, we talked about a lot of topics that were a lot more liberal in nature, more perspectives that were liberal. I did a paper on freedom of speech and how that ties to the freedom of religion, which my professor loved. She really enjoyed that paper, but it actually talks negative about a lot of democratic people who have been trying to quell free speech. So it's interesting. Interfaith work, it definitely intertwines with a lot of liberal philosophy and ideas. But they don't represent a conservative perspective of interfaith work. So that's got me kind of interested to look at, is there a conservative perspective out there? Is there other ways of looking at interfaith work as well? So I might be exploring that on my own as we go through this semester also. But kind of some fun stuff to look at. My philosophy personally is, I think there are good ideas that are from the liberal side of the political perspective, if you will. On the conservative side, there's great ideas as well. I think they both have good ideas. When it comes to application of the parties and getting into party politics and stuff, I think both parties are full of baloney and terrible. We shouldn't follow either one of them wholeheartedly, because they have good points and bad points. And I think we should accept the good points of both parties and get rid of the bad points. The more we do that, I think the more we will improve the politics in America. That's just my opinion, but I think that's going to be a good one. You're free to have your opinion as well. If you want to express it in the comments, you're welcome to. But it'll be fun to learn and go through these things. It's been interesting to get into more of a liberal perspective, because I come from more of a conservative perspective myself. I prefer more conservative politics. But what we are learning in this interfaith class is more on the liberal side. Many more liberal-minded people are dealing with interfaith work and doing things. But that doesn't mean just because it's more liberal-focused, it's bad. What it means is the people who are doing it are bringing a liberal perspective to interfaith work. And so I'm trying to parse that out and say what really is interfaith and what is more liberal perspective, and how can interfaith also work with conservative values as well, and how can we make this work in a better way? So it's fun. We'll see how it goes. I'm not necessarily going to change anybody's mind on how to do interfaith work or teach a class on it or nothing, but it'll be fun to do. So some cool stuff coming up. Look forward to talking with you more next week so that we can continue to do our updates as we start spring semester and get through all these classes and things. Will be really fun. If you're looking for something interesting to study, just as a kind of a side note type thing, one of the things that I've studied over the holidays, in fact, is, let me get this book out here. This right here, The Scopes Monkey Trial. This is absolutely fun. This one's just a picture, kind of a picture book. It goes into basic description of stuff, but has a lot of pictures of what happened and things. This was a trial that happened in 1925 in Tennessee. Tennessee, years earlier, had outlawed the teaching of the evolution. So if you want to deal with like book bans and other things like that that are happening today, this is a fascinating trial to look at. They banned in Tennessee. It was one of the first states to ban the teaching of evolution. And there was a teacher who, it was in the textbook they were using, and so he taught evolution. He mentioned it and discussed it with the kids, along with creationism and things that were there as well. And he got in trouble for it and then went to trial. And oh my gosh, is this explosive? This is crazy. What's interesting about this trial is it's kind of a fake trial. So the trial itself was real. But what happened was this happened in Dayton, Tennessee, little town. And they're sitting there going, man, you know, our economy's low. We're really struggling to make ends meet here. Our town's getting kind of poor. We need to bring in a lot more money. What can we do? And somebody said, hey, why don't we prosecute this teacher for, make this big deal about it and prosecute this teacher over him doing evolution. And so they said, okay, that sounds great. So they went to the teacher, John Scopes, and said, hey, we want to prosecute you over this. Are you okay with that? To kind of go along with this whole deal. It's going to bring in a lot of press. We're going to make it a big Christian event, and it's going to bring in a ton of people and a lot of money to our city. And he went, yeah, okay, sounds good. I'll do it. And then later he's like, maybe I shouldn't have agreed to that, but we'll see how this goes. So his goal was to defend the opportunities and the rights to do research and to have opposing opinions and ideas. The other groups were more evangelical in nature, and they wanted to make this a Christian thing, like Christianity cannot survive with evolution around. It's one or the other. We can't do both. This is, you know, and so they made it a big deal. The judge was Christian. The prosecutors were all Christian. They opened every day with prayer. They did a lot of stuff that was more pro-Christian. The defense, the John Scopes and his attorneys, they were denied to bring in a lot of their expert witnesses. So the trial kind of was a little rigged in favor of Christianity. But oh man, is there a twist at the end? This is so crazy how this trial works out. It's so fascinating. I'll give you a little tidbit just because a lot of people probably aren't going to actually go study this, but this is absolutely fascinating trial to get into. Everything was kind of geared for the Christians to win the trial and say that creationism and God is better than evolution, and that's what we should preach and everything else. So they did actually find the jury. It was an eight days of trial and deliberation on stuff. The jury was there for like 3 or 4 hours out of the whole 8 days to hear testimony and things, and because there's a lot of legal parlance back and forth deciding on stuff. It looked like everything was going in favor of the Christians. In fact, John Scopes was deemed guilty by the jury. Basically, it was a trial by jury, and but then on the appeal it was overturned, and nothing really happened to John Scopes. He lost his job as the high school teacher and coach, but and that's kind of all it was. I think he had to pay $100 fine as well, but he might have gotten that one back after the appeal. What's interesting about it is the defense attorney, William Darrow, I think was what his name was. I know Darrow was his last name. He brought the prosecution attorney onto the stand. Now, the prosecution attorney was, his name just left me. I'm sure I can find it in here. But he actually had he's a very famous guy. Oh, Clarence Darrow was the defense attorney. And he brought the guy on trial, let's see, it was right over here. There was a whole movie about the Scopes trial and everything else that happened. William Jennings Bryan was the attorney that was the prosecution. So he was that William Jennings Bryan. He ran unsuccessfully twice for the presidency. He was in the Senate for a little bit. He did some other executive level stuff in the government. And he was using this as kind of a platform to really push himself out there. He was also a evangelical minister, and he was the prosecuting attorney. So as in a last-ditch effort, the defense attorney got the prosecuting attorney on the stand and started asking him questions about the Bible. And he had to admit that the Bible is not accurate in everything it says. And it's not, he kind of, Clarence Darrow kind of went after the sola scriptura type idea of the Bible is absolute, the Bible is complete, it's perfect, it's all univocal and everything else that's very common. And William Darrow actually proved, and this guy Bryant had to admit that it's not perfect. You can't take everything in it literally. It's not 100% accurate. There's some contradictory challenges in it and things like that. And their whole court trial like just fell apart. So what's crazy is the judge actually called for an immediate recess as soon as Bryant admitted that the Bible is not perfect and is not completely accurate in everything it says. And because the prosecution's case was starting to fall apart. So he called for a recess, got it all reset, came back in, brought the jury in, found the guy guilty, and then it was kind of it was a fake trial to an extent, but it was really interesting. So I learned about it in my Mormonism class. I talked about it in one of the videos and things. So I got a book on it. I got another one coming, in fact, next week that's by a Pulitzer Prize. It won a Pulitzer Prize for the descriptions of the Scopes monkey trial. Fascinating trial. So get into that. And if you want to see some fun stuff from history, 1925 America, and some interesting things to learn from that trial. So thanks for watching. Hope you're really enjoying this. If you guys like all these videos, and hopefully you're paying attention to the videos that I'm doing on the Bible right now, getting into the New Testament, just filming Romans right now. In fact, you'll notice that the background will look awfully familiar because my school schedule is keeping me on campus almost every day. I've got to go to campus. I can't go to my office where I normally shoot all my video footage from. So I have a phone booth at my office that I've talked about in the past, and so I get in there and I record the video. So I'm doing them at home, my home office now, just because I can't go to my office all the time to do those. I got to stay closer to the campus. So those videos will look different in the background, but hopefully you're enjoying those as we go through the New Testament. Some fun stuff to learn, and we're going to get into more scriptures later after we do the New Testament. In fact, as well, we're going to continue on. So please pay attention. Please follow along. If you love what we're doing, please donate. Feel free to donate. There's links in all of the videos where you can donate some money to what I'm doing, basically, and help support me in my cause of doing this. So thanks very much. We'll talk to y'all later.